For those of you that don't know me, my name is John Lux. I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Thanks for joining our webinar on engaging candidates and legislators. For those that aren't familiar with Film Florida, the organization is a not-for-profit association run by volunteer members of the industry that represent all sectors of the film, television, production, and digital media tech industry throughout Florida. Thanks to our current president, Gail Morgan, and our legislative committee co-chairs, Todd Rubin and Paul Sermons, for their support in putting together this webinar. And thanks to Gerardo Lopez for once again hosting our webinars. He's always willing to help out for Film Florida, and we appreciate that. And I want to start off with some context. And for that, we're lucky enough to have two great guests with us this morning. Representative Holly Raschein is completing her final term in the Florida House of Representatives, representing District 120, which includes Monroe County and Southern Miami-Dade County. And Mike Miller is a former state representative serving from 2014 to 2018, representing District 47, which includes Central Orange County, including Winter Park. So let's get rolling. Representatives, we're preaching to our industry that they need to engage their local legislators and candidates. From your side of that discussion as being the candidates and the legislators, can each of you talk about the importance of hearing from your local constituents about specific issues? Representative Raschein, why don't you go first?
Sure, and thank you, John, and thank you to Film Florida for hosting this webinar. And it's so wonderful to see my good friend Mike Miller. I miss him. Yeah, but yes, so on that point, it's absolutely essential that you engage with your legislators. We are tasked with the job to go up there and represent our constituency. So if film is important to you, you need to let your legislators know. And, by virtue of our position, it is our jobs to go up there and fight for you and fight for what is important to you. And obviously film is very important to me. I know it's very important to Mike. And so that's a no-brainer for us, but absolutely essential, critical, must do.
Yeah, and again, Holly, great to see you too. And I had the opportunity to learn from Holly. I was behind her in terms of the terms. I started later in the legislature. And so I learned a lot about what she's talking about, and that is advocating for your constituency. And so when I got to the legislature, I looked around Central Florida and I said, wow, one of the best industries, one of the best things we have going is not just the tourism part of it, but the film that's nested within that. And so I took it upon myself to work with John, who's a great executive director for you guys. And we worked on crafting a bill to try to continue to work with the legislature to figure out a way to have the government be engaged in supporting the industry. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy around that. And when you walk into your different legislators' offices, you're going to have to probably spend a little bit of time educating them on the positive side of supporting film, in that it is a choice. We make a choice. Just like we make a choice to live here in Florida, we make a choice to fight for the things we care about. And one of the things that I always thought was worth fighting for was the idea that our government, the state government here in Florida, would support film so that it doesn't go off to places like you're noticing now in Georgia and Tennessee or Louisiana in particular, North Carolina, and any number of states, New York and California, which are actively pursuing the business that should be here in Florida. So I know Holly supported that as well. We were trying to figure out a way to work. And as you guys get to this next legislative session, you're going to realize that there's about 60 new people in the legislature. We have term limits. So one of the things that John's probably going to talk about here is it's not only engagement, but it's education. You really have to kind of teach a lot of these young men and women, or older men and women, how important film is to Florida, and really, honestly, the ROI. What's the return for the state? And it's in my estimation, I know Holly, we both looked at it for our districts and we said, this is critical. I mean, you look at movies like Bloodline. What an amazing part that was for the Keys. And I just think that it needs to be talked about. It needs to be discussed continually. It's a drumbeat. I know John gets frustrated sometimes, but it's a drumbeat. And if you can keep it going, you never know what happens.
And Representative Miller, let's stick with you on this next one. It's well documented that both of you have been some of the strongest advocates in the Florida House the last number of years for our industry. From the legislator side, what specifically resonated with you? Why did you support our efforts?
Well, I really was moved by the small businessman, the small businesswoman, not the Disneys and the Universals coming into the office. I was really interested more in the folks that are behind the scenes, the ones that are really working hard, maybe going project to project to project. I mean, that is a lot of what your industry is. And you You don't always get a Batman or a big, blockbuster movie. You got to work your way through TV series, and then, maybe, whatever other things you can get, commercials. All the things are part of film. And it really resonated, the personal stories. I thought listening to the dream and those folks they're trying to live their dream. I think that, that's very inspirational. And then, on the flip side, the business side, what's the return on investment for the state? Why would the state of Florida, with all the things we have going on, 21 million Floridians, why would we want to take a particular interest in film? And you look at the average wages, you look at what it does to the exposure of the state for people wanting to come here and explore. That ROI, that return on investment, for me really resonated. The personal stories and the actual financial benefit for the state.
Representative Raschein, what resonated to you?
Well, so Mike mentioned Bloodline, but even prior to Bloodline being filmed in the Florida Keys, I was a fan of the film industry, the entertainment industry. And as a fiscal conservative, I think, Mike highlighted the economic argument. It's huge. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of jobs. The local economic impact is huge. If we want to highlight Bloodline, in 1 year, it was about $94 million, the economic impact, local impact in the Keys from 1 year of a series. I think that, obviously we love series. Movies are wonderful, but series are long-term. The engagement with a community is long-term. It's just as a no-brainer to me that Mike talked about the ROI to the state. People are going to make films. People are going to film series, and they're going to do it regardless of, location and things. They're going to go to places that welcome them, roll out the red carpet. And obviously, as you've seen in past years, we haven't done that as a state. And so I'm just so proud of Film Florida and organizations like it that you do keep beating that drum. And I know that it's frustrating, but again, this is worth fighting for. It's worth championing. And again, Bloodline, just looking at all the local businesses that were engaged, from caterers to hotels, the real estate industry got a bump. I mean, it's just, it was so broad, and the economic impact, just the hospitality industry that was engaged. I mean, it was just, it was rocking and rolling down here. And unfortunately, due to lack of engagement, if you will, at the state level, the series ended. Bloodline was slated for 7 or 8 seasons, and boom, we saw the end come, unfortunately, for 3 seasons. So I'm very encouraged by your efforts, and I'm very, very pleased to see this webinar, and I hope, I wish you, the most success.
Representative Raschein, I want to ask you a question that actually just popped up on our Q&A here. It says, is there any reason why Republican legislators are so much more supportive of the film tax credit in Georgia versus Florida? We hear a lot about Georgia, and we're all frankly kind of sick of seeing the Georgia peach. When you look at, the pushback that we've received from House leadership the last couple of years, why is it so different in Georgia, do you think?
I can't speak for Georgia, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues necessarily. And I just think it comes down to philosophical differences. Again, I'm a fiscal conservative, and I think there's just differences among opinions and, where we spend taxpayer dollars. But the piece of legislation that Mike has worked on, and obviously I co-sponsored, was a different direction. We took a different direction. We sort of pivoted away from the tax credit and went to sort of, I don't know, what would you call it? More of a, not even an incentive. It's a
rebate. It's a rebate.
A rebate. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. I apologize. It was a rebate version. So, somebody would have to come here, do the work, and show the state of Florida, look at what we did, and then the state would then, compensate for that. So I thought that was a very measured approach, very targeted, and
yeah, Holly, you're exactly right. And I appreciate you co-sponsoring, because I was a freshman. That's back what I said earlier about finding good mentors. Holly coached me a lot through the committee process and getting it to the House floor. Actually, we got that bill to the House floor, and we didn't get a whole lot of chairmen to support us, but we were able to use our educational, members of Film Florida that went to each individual committee members' offices and said, "Here, this is what the return is. This is what we're gonna. This is." It was that constant drumbeat. It was creating momentum. Holly will tell you, politics is momentum, right? You got to create momentum in a bill. You got 10,000 bills that show up every session, and you got to only a couple hundred get to the finish line. So you really got to create momentum. You got to keep it going without being obnoxious. It's a balance, but you can do it. And when you get there, when you get that momentum going, and this is where Holly and I completely agreed, we don't want to be shelling out money as a bet. We want to make sure that you are producing something that it has a return. And then we would like to say, because I do believe we are competing with other states. I don't want to mention the teach anymore, but we are competing with them. And so if we are going to make a decision, if we want a certain industry, I would argue I would want film more than, no disparaging on t-shirts, but I have 1,000 t-shirts already. I don't need any more t-shirt industry. I would like to see the film industry. So we worked hard on saying, if you complete a film, complete a project, it's audited not once, but twice. We know, and by the ancillary benefits, all the things that Holly talked about with all the caterers and everything else around, everybody's benefiting, but the actual project itself returned money to the state of Florida. We thought that would be a great way to encourage that. And I know Todd's on the call. Todd and I talked a lot about projects in Jacksonville and places like that. We were also trying to encourage places that normally wouldn't get film. It's great to film in the Keys. It's a beautiful place, but maybe, in a little southern Alachua County place. We also wanted to encourage that because we wanted to diversify our economy, because a lot of these smaller rural counties in Florida, they struggle. So anyway, we were trying to look at the bigger picture. And I don't want to put it in the past tense, because I know John is still fighting the fight. All you guys, Gail, as the president, it can be done. And one of the blessings of term limits is we get new folks in. There's a new chance to educate, to discuss, to bring up the history of what Holly and I worked on. I mean, listen, it precedes us. Marco Rubio supported the bill, and Jeb Bush, he was out there pushing for it. So you got good, solid conservative Republicans that worked very hard for the film industry. So you can always, people might not remember me. They'll remember Holly. So you can say, Representative Raschein, she's, but there's a serious history to this project and the efforts. And I think you should use that as part of your pitch. Make sure they realize that you're not walking into a new idea. This has been very important to the state for 20 plus years.
So, and to your point, Representative Miller, the old program was on the books from, the most recent one was from 2010 to 2016. There were obviously some challenges in that program, which your legislation addressed when we were trying to get a new program on the books. And then we've taken even your concepts and moved them even further along with Senator Gruters and Representative Buchanan with the current piece of legislation. And to that, Representative Raschein, I wanted to ask you a last question here. We've obviously had our challenges getting through our to the Florida House, the leadership side, the last 4 years. With new leadership coming in November, what do you think are the one or two most important things that we should focus on as an industry in engaging the new leadership and the incoming legislators to kind of make sure we continue to turn the page to the future, as opposed to constantly bringing up the past and some of the things that the legislators weren't too pleased about?
Sure. And, the past is in the past, right? So always look to the future. I think that's very, very wise. And I think that you need to be sensitive to the fact that, and which you will be, and I'm sure you are already, that this is, like Mike mentioned, there's going to be 60 plus new members, right, of the House. And I don't even know how many new senators. And so I think from an education standpoint, I think that needs to be top. I think you need to also be sensitive to the fact that these legislators are going to be new, and we're going to sort of be looking at this through the lens of a pandemic. And so there's already going to be a notion that the budget is going to be tight. We're going to have to maybe perhaps cut the budget or some projects. Maybe there won't even be member projects. And so this is an economic issue. However, I think that the policy that you're hoping to pass, I think is important to highlight. While this, yes, is an economic issue, but the policy and the change putting something on the books that we can work from, I think is a good angle to tackle this. And I think, hopefully you'll get something passed this year, but if not, I think you use this year to educate.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I know Holly's, right. Look to the future. Realize that film has been a part of Florida's, industry mix for decades now. But it is a new era, and it is going to be more difficult to figure out how to manage in the pandemic. So be sensitive to that. I think that's really, really important. But also know that, like we talked about before we got on the webinar, there's all kinds of things you can do to support film. As you can come through the front door with a bill and you can say, hey, we're going to, rebates, all these kind of things. But you can also work with the local film commissions that you guys are working with right now. Figure out all the other things that you can try to move the legislators to think about, regulatory relief. Look at other options, and by the way, the new legislators especially aren't going to know a lot of these options. So you're going to have to be showing them a whole potpourri of options, especially with the economic downturn, to figure out, well, what could I do? What could I do to support the industry? Even if it's just chipping away a little bit, like Holly said, move forward and push for incremental change. And then, I think that's the play you're going to have to make in this pandemic world. And then you see what happens come out of that when our economy's back.
Well, Representatives Raschein and Miller, I want to thank both of you for your time this morning. I promised I wouldn't take too much time. Hopefully we didn't do that. We really appreciate your insight and your unwavering support for our industry through the years. And we really appreciate you being on with us this morning.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much, and keep plowing forward.
We will. Thank you.
Okay. See you guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Nice to see you, Holly.
Bye-bye.
So for everybody that's sticking around here, we have a lot to do still, and we appreciate you staying on here. We're going to get into, and I'm going to share my screen here because we got a lot to share. Let me make sure I do that right. Okay. All right, Gerardo, let me know if you see any issues on your end with the shared screen here. So first thing we want to do is remind everybody, work smarter, not harder. And the reason I'm starting with this slide is because I am a resource to you. A lot of the things that we're talking about here today, we encourage you to do on your own. But in most cases, I've already done it for a lot of these candidates and legislators. And so if you want to explore the process on your own, you're obviously welcome to, and we encourage that. But if you just have questions about a candidate or a legislator in your area, don't be afraid to shoot me an email. My phone number is up here as well, but more times than not, I'm probably going to ask you to shoot me an email just so I can gather my notes and type out what I know. We have met as an organization, we've done hundreds of meetings over the last couple of years, just since the middle of the summer through the middle of October. I personally will do over 60 meetings with candidates and legislators. And so while I can talk high level, the local meetings and the local stories are really more important than anything I might do. But I have a good context, a good ground laying for all of you and a lot of these candidates. So please take down my information. Please make sure you use me as a resource, use me as a cheat sheet in order to help you along in the process. I could cut off a decent amount of time for you if you just reach out, and I can give you the information that I have thus far. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to talk about how to find out who your Florida House representative and who your senator are, where you live and where you work, how to get in contact with your current legislators, how to find out who's running for the open seats right now, how to find contact information for different candidates, how to communicate with candidates, and how to engage them and make sure your voice is heard, because ultimately this is what it's all about, is having your voice heard. So here are some websites that are really important for everybody to keep in mind here. And we're going to go to each one of them and kind of talk about them a little bit. So this is, we have the Florida House website, Florida Senate, and Department of Elections. And so keep in mind that only you're only eligible to vote for candidates in your own district. And so basically that can be frustrating because, there's 120 seats in the Florida House. There are 40 seats in the Florida Senate. And on any given year, the most that each person can vote for is 2 of those 160 seats. And in this year, since only 21 seats in the Senate are up for election, it's possible that you could only vote for 1 person in all 160 seats. And so, yes, you're limited in the direct impact you have on legislators, but it's also a really important learning process to figure out who's local, who's around you. Just because you might be outside of a district doesn't mean you can't reach out to them as somebody in a neighboring district as well. You may work in a different district than you live, and so there's those type of things. But 120 seats are up for election in the Florida House this year. 21 seats are up for election in the Florida Senate. The odd numbered districts and District 20. And the reason District 20 is because that senator retired, and so off cycle, and so his seat is up for election as well. So in the Senate, it's the odd numbered districts in District 20. In the House, it's every House district, all 120 of them. So let's go. I'm going to get out of here, and we're going to go. Let's see. Let me make sure. And I want to go to the Florida House website here and just kind of show you around that a little bit. So we're looking at myfloridahouse.gov, okay? It's the Florida House of Representatives, and right next to it is flsenate.gov. That's the Florida Senate website. So both of these will show your representative and your senator, and both of these can give you great information about how to get in touch with them. So what we want to focus on here is this here where it says representatives. So if you go here, and now if you know who your representative is, you can just scroll down and find them. They're sorted normally by alphabetical order by last name. If you know your district, you can sort it by name, district, party. Now remember, I actually get some emails from people that say, I live in District 4 in Florida. And what they're actually referring to might be their House district, it might be their Senate district, it might be their congressional district. Saying House or District 4 really doesn't, it might actually be a county commission district as well. That doesn't help me. That doesn't answer where you actually live. So when people reach out to me, what I need is their address. And the reason I need that to confirm all of that is here, if you go here to find your representative, or if you're in the Senate, you can go to find your senator, and it's a different layout, but it's basically the same. You can type in your address here in this box and do a search, or you can do it from the House site. The House site is nicer. So, and I'm actually going to type in my old work address, and we'll see what comes up. I used to work in downtown Orlando, so that's that address. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to select, we're going to have them find it for us. So this site will give us our State House representative, District 47, which is actually Representative Miller's old district. The district senator's information says not available at that time. Not sure why, because they are in office. So let's go over to the Senate. And we'll search there, and we'll see what comes up. For the local senator for that office is Senator Linda Stewart. So as I mentioned, Senate districts are odd numbers this year. So District 13, Senator Stewart is up for election. And as we know, all 120 seats of the Florida House are up for election. So Representative Escamani is up for election as well. So that tells you who your current legislators are, but you also, that we're in an election year. We need to know who is actually up for election. So what I go to is, and I actually cheated here. I was practicing before everybody got on. So let me go back to the main website, the Department of Elections website, Florida Department of State Florida Division of Elections. If you go here and you go to candidates and committees, and then information about candidates and committees. So you go to candidates and then information, and you scroll down a little bit and you're going to see candidates again. You're going to click on that. And now this database comes up, and you're going to look for 2020 election. Not that you want to right now, but you can go back a number of elections and see what happened. But 2020 elections, and hit view list. And then it's going to give you everything. Now you could sort here if you wanted to just look at, you know, something specific, but you can always just scroll down, and we're going to get to state senator. So let's just say we were looking at District 13, which was Senator Stewart's district, because we know she's up for election. You can find here that it names Linda Stewart as the incumbent, Democrat, she qualified. And then she's running against Republican Josh Anderson, who's also qualified and was unopposed in the primary. So if we just actually go up a little bit, let's look at District 9, because this is a little bit different. So you can see there were a lot more candidates. And this is part of the reason why we waited until after the primary to do this discussion, because if you're dealing with the primary, you could get 6, 7, 8 candidates, and then you're trying to figure out, who do I reach out to? Do I have to take 5 or 6 meetings, that type of thing. So in District 9, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Democrats in the primary, and Patricia Sigmund won. You can see here it says 1. So she's the Democrat that's on the ticket in November, and she's running against the only other Republican, which was Jason Berdor, who is a former state representative, now running for a seat in the state Senate. And then there is a no party candidate as well. And so this website tells you who's running for which area. It tells you incumbents, if there is one. See up here in District 7, you can see that Senator Travis Hudson is the incumbent. So if that's important, or you want to know that, you get that information. So there's a lot of good information about who's running against who. Again, it's only listing the odd districts here. And then in the state representative, it's listing all 120. So again, find your representatives, okay, by typing in your address. Know your Senate district and your House district. And of course, they're different, because there are 120 House districts and only 40 Senate districts. So know your different districts. Go over to the Department of Elections and find those districts and see who's running. So now you say, okay, let's, just for an example, House District 31, okay? And I use this as an example because there's no incumbent, and it basically is a clean slate. And so you had these 4 candidates running for the primary. You had 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. So you can see that Deborah Kaplan was eliminated, and Steven Novacek also was eliminated. So we have Chrissy Style and Keith Trunow. So you say to yourself, okay, this happens to be my district, for example. How do I reach out to them? Well, most of them, 99 out of 100, have some form of campaign website, or they have some form of Facebook page, and that's a good source of contact. So if you were to type in Keith Trunow, Florida House, or Chrissy Style, Florida House, what you're going to find is their campaign websites. And so here is Keith Trunow's, and here is Chrissy Styles. And so you can find, actually, these websites are a lot better than some of them in terms of contact information. They both list them right at the very top: phone and email, and phone and email. And so, you know, you can reach out to them. And so the question at that point is, what is it that you're reaching out for? And so, you know, when you do that, what are we trying to accomplish? That's kind of where we're at right now. And so, okay, so as we talked about, those are the websites we want to do. And so now you found out who's running and how to get in touch with them. So here's what you want to do. If you are reaching out to a current legislator, you want to go back to their website here, and here we go. Sorry, I'm moving around here, so I'm multitasking. So we have, we know, let's just say our representative is Anna Escamani, okay? So we're gonna go, actually I didn't need to do that. For in the House, you can go to full details. So we're going to click on her profile and it's going to be more information. And so what's important here is finding the aides, legislative assistant, district secretary. Some of them have 2, 3, 4, 5. Some of them actually don't have any right now. And what happens a lot during campaign season is some of the aides come off of the state government payroll of being an aide, and they go on the candidate's campaign payroll. And so they're taken off of the website here because they're no longer technically working as an aide or a secretary. But whatever is listed here, you want to include these aides. That's really important to include the aides. So in the Florida House, the emails are firstname.lastname@myfloridahouse.gov. That goes for both the aides and the representatives. In the Senate, it's flip-flopped. It's lastname.firstname@flsenate.gov. So that's how you reach out to them. Even if you don't have their direct email addresses, you can always get that just by knowing their names. So when you send emails to legislators, and this also goes for the candidates. If you have any candidate staff, do this as well. But let's just say it's across the board. If possible, always copy the aides or the secretaries, because a lot of times they see the emails before the representatives do. Keep it very short and sweet. Save the personal stories for your meeting. Expect no longer than a 15-minute meeting. Typically, beggars can't be choosers with date and time. And I say that not literally. Like, it's okay to say, Mr. and Mrs. Candidate, Mr. and Mrs. Legislator, I would love to meet with you the week of, October 6th or whatever it may be. If you have a specific day, you can ask that. However, the more you box that in, the easier it is for them to turn it down. If you say, I can meet with you anytime over the next month, they can pick a date and time. And don't be afraid, if there's a conflict, it's okay to say, I have a doctor's appointment at that today and time. Is there any way you can push it back to 2 hours or something like that? Have a communication with them. You certainly can't go in demanding a date and a time. That's not going to get you anywhere, but you can be a little bit flexible. But I typically try to keep my schedule as open and flexible as possible. And that way, if they ask for a specific day and time, I can say yes. The easier it is to get the meeting, the better it's going to be. Specifically mention if you are a constituent. Now, we talked about how to find your legislators. You may work in a different district than you live. And so it's important to say, I live in your district, or I work in your district. They're going to give a little bit more time and effort to those constituents, as opposed to, say, me, who's reaching out statewide. I might not get as much attention from somebody in Northwest Florida because they know I don't live there. And so if you're a constituent, specifically say, or, to make it a little bit wider ranging, let's just say, like right now, I live in Osceola County. Maybe I'm not in the district of a specific legislator in Osceola County, but I can say I'm a resident of Osceola County, and that helps as well. So the more closer to home you get, the better. Speaking of meetings, though, some people may not be comfortable doing in-person meetings right now, given the pandemic. That's totally fine. Ask for a phone call. Ask for a Zoom meeting. I mentioned the 60+ meetings that I'm doing. I haven't done a single in-person meeting. There's been 5 or 6 phone calls, and the rest have all been Zoom meetings. And those have been very, very effective, because you can still see a face. You can still put a name with the face. That's how you start building relationships. And that's what is really important here. So if we move along, engaging candidates or legislators, share personal stories. Both Representative Raschein and Miller, I believe, reference this. Personal stories are going to be most important for you. Assume that we have already shared the big picture statistics, all of the metrics with them. They're not interested in hearing, from you all in the weeds stuff. They don't need to hear that. What they want to know is, how is this affecting you? Mr. or Mrs. Legislator, I used to work this many days out of a year in the industry, and since the state stopped supporting our industry, I now work this many less days per year. Or in order to maintain that, I have to travel to another state, away from my family, away from my kids, and I'm now spending money in another state's economy because I need room and board and food and lodging and all of that. Those are the type of stories that resonate. Representative Miller talks specifically about, you know, the stories of the local community and the local people that work in our industry. Those resonated. And so those personal stories are the most important. Build a relationship. I often say this is a marathon and a sprint. You know, we want to get something done as fast as possible, but at the same time, we also know, you know, it might be next year, it might be the year after, it might be the year after. And we've been saying that for a couple of years. So now, a couple of years ago when we said it might be a couple of years, well, that's now, and we're still working at it. So we want to focus on both the short term and the long term. And some of those relationships do take time. You're not going to build a great relationship in one meeting. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So you need to build those relationships, and that comes from repetitive communication. Doesn't mean you have to take 20 meetings with them, but maybe it's an initial email, and then it's a meeting, and then it's another email a couple of months later or a week later or whatever it may be. You can build up that communication. We talk about walking or volunteering for candidates. They love help. They need to get elected. If they can't get elected, they can't do anybody any help. So any help that you can give, both Democrat and Republican, we're a nonpartisan organization. We're a nonpartisan industry. We have to be. You know, we support all candidates and that support us, because it is physically impossible to get through the state legislature unless we have support from both sides. It is not, I mean, by the numbers, we wouldn't necessarily need that, but realistically, we need support from both sides in order to get this through. So don't be afraid to support, to help out multiple candidates. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. Offer your personal cell number. So personal cell number is actually code for us with how far in the relationship are you. Offer your personal cell phone number. Some candidates are very likely to give it back to you. And that's important because who knows, in legislative session, we might need to get in touch with a candidate or a legislator the night before a vote and say, Mr. and Mrs. Legislator, we need your help. This is important. You know, there's been many times when I've been texting with candidates as they're walking into committee meetings or walking onto the House or Senate floor, and they need a little bit of last minute information. The personal cell phone numbers are great because once the legislators get to legislative session, phone calls and emails are so difficult because they're just inundated with so much information. If you have a personal cell phone number, it's a lot easier to get there. And again, that doesn't happen overnight, but it's a very valuable commodity if you can get personal cell phone numbers, because that shows that they trust you and they want to help you and you can communicate with them better. And then campaign contributions. This is something that you know always comes up. Film Florida cannot make campaign contributions. Film Florida cannot endorse candidates. And so from an information standpoint, our role is to give all of you objective information. So when I take these meetings, the first thing I do is get out of the meeting and write down my notes. Good meeting, very supportive, wants to co-sponsor, or likes the industry, maybe isn't so sure about economic incentives, but does support us. Maybe there's common ground. You know, if there's a relationship tie, like some legislators and candidates have really good relationships with a local film commissioner. So you drop that name and you take that note, and so we know. Or maybe they have a really good relationship with one of our lobbyists. So we make sure we know that as well. So the lobbyist knows where that person stands. So it's all about gathering information. So when all of you go out and have meetings or take meetings or emails or whatever, we ask you to forward that information to us so we can keep those notes, because we need to know which candidates support us, which legislators support us once they get elected, which ones support us, which ones don't, and which ones are kind of on the fence. And we know the ones that support us, we need to keep working those relationships, make them stronger. Those that are on the fence, we need to push them over the fence. We need to make them get them to see the light of supporting us. And those that don't, we need to figure out why. We need to figure out, are they in leadership roles? How can they hurt us? You know, we need to know that information. So any information you can provide back to us is really valuable. I started talking about campaign contributions. If you don't want to do any meetings because you're not comfortable doing it, you just see, and there are people out there to say, I don't want to do this. Can I just write a check to somebody? Like, that is extremely important as well. I mentioned that these candidates can't they cannot function, they cannot help anybody if they don't get elected. And so this is something that is not directly affiliated with Film Florida. It is the Floridians for Film and Tech Production. This is a political action committee, a PAC, that was created to ensure that the interests of the 50,000 Floridians that work in our industry are represented. And this was started by a colleague of ours. The website is floridiansforfilm.com. Again, this is not affiliated with Film Florida other than we have the same common interests and we're all working for the same goal, which is to get more projects and more jobs here and more money here for our residents. And so if you are so inclined to make contributions, this is a great place to go. Some people don't know where necessarily to put their money, so put it here. And this group works with our lobbyists, again, completely separate from us, and figuring out the best way to make those contributions. So that's where we're at right now with those things. Let me see. Talking points as people are going to have meetings, and I'm going to address as many of these questions. I see some of them coming in as possible here, so I'm not forgetting about those. Talking points. Again, these are some of our talking points. You don't necessarily need to worry about them, but if you want some of them in your back pocket, you're welcome to have them. So there are more than 50,000 Floridians that work in our industry in Florida. That's an important number. The average annual wage is over $84,000 a year for an industry professional that works here in Florida. Now, we actually use that in our talking point. And honestly, I get more pushback sometimes from people that work in the industry than outside the industry saying, I'm not really sure that number is accurate. But that number came directly from the Department of Economic Opportunities Bureau of Workforce Statistics and Economic Research. We didn't make up that number. That came from the state. And so if the state is going to say that, and that is a good talking point for legislators, we're going to use that. These are high wage jobs, and you can argue about whether it's 84 or 86 or 82 or 78. The number is less important than the fact that it's a high wage job. The average annual wage for any job in Florida, all jobs combined, is in the low 50s. So when we go to legislators and say high wage jobs, that's us. We're in that bucket, and that's what the state needs more of. We're a statewide industry. There are more than 30 colleges and universities with programs for our industry. So the education side is very strong. Representative Miller referenced that. Florida is the only state in the Southeast without an incentive program. We're one of only 17 states in the country, most of which are in the upper Midwest, which really isn't our competition. So we are on an island here in Florida without a program. That's what we talk about. We know that we have lost more than $1.3 billion worth of projects the last number of years. That's the tip of the iceberg. Those are the ones we know about. There really is no telling how much more, but those are documented lost projects. And then personal stories, and personal stories. And we talked about, this is a website, another website to keep in mind. And we're going to go here. So this is filmflorida.org/legislative-issues. This is our website. So if you go here under Advocacy Toolkit, there's a number of different things. Talks about following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for more information. And then there are a lot of different links here. These are all good information for you to have. Again, we're not asking any of you to go in and have a meeting with a legislator and talk about specific legislation. That's not the best use of your time. The best use of your time is sharing personal stories and asking for support of the industry. That is the best use of your time. Don't get in the weeds with specific legislation, because that can get convoluted and messy, and there's a lot of different things going on there. But the best use of your time is to tell what you're an expert in, which is your personal experiences. That's the best way to maintain that relationship. But if you want some extra talking points and some extra backstory information, that's a good place to go. So let me jump back here to our presentation. Calendar of events. So the general election is Tuesday, November 3rd, as we all know. In addition to voting for the president, which is getting the most attention, we're voting for 120 House members and 21 Senate members here in Florida. That's where our focus is. Legislative committee weeks are going to be about December 8th through February 19th. And I say about because they haven't been announced yet. They wait until after the elections. There's an organizational meeting right before Thanksgiving where all the legislators typically go up to Tallahassee and congratulate each other for winning and get together and basically set out a plan for the next couple of months. Then they start having actual committee weeks, which are really important as well. That's in December, January, and February. Then in their individual weeks, like I think there's going to be a total of 5 weeks. So it's not a 3-month ordeal up there. It's a week. They go up for a week and then they're home and then they stay home for a week and then they might go up for another week and then they come home and, it's off and on over that period of time. We actually get a lot of work done in Tallahassee during committee weeks. That's actually more effective than actually legislative session. Legislative session in 2021 is Tuesday, March 2nd through Friday, April 30th. And then the fiscal year starts July 1st. So one of the questions we got in advance here is if a bill was passed, when would it go into effect? That would go into effect July 1st of 2021. And now all of these dates are contingent, well, specifically legislative committee weeks and legislative session. We don't know what's going to happen with the pandemic. They've never done a virtual committee weeks or a virtual session. We don't know if that's being discussed or if that's on the table at all. Those are all TBDs. But so these dates, and when I reference Tallahassee, that's under normal conditions. So in terms of our efforts, legislative champions, we expect Senator Joe Gruters and Representative James Buchanan to be our bill sponsors again. They've indicated interest, and so obviously we got to get through elections for that. We are again advocating for a targeted rebate program, the one that Representative Raschein referenced. This is again taken from the old program that expired in 2016, taking the good things out of that. Fixing some of the bad things went into Representative Miller's bill when he was in the House. And then we've taken that the next step to make that even better and more targeted and focus on the ROI. That is the biggest thing that our challenge is as an industry is the return on investment. And when we say return on investment, the state measures that by if they put $1 in, how much state tax revenue do they get back? So the previous program did not get back enough for their ROI. So everything that we have worked on with Senator Gruters and Representative Buchanan is all about making sure that that ROI is acceptable. So that's the non-negotiable. All the other little details, depending on what legislators, that's all fine, but specific ROI is the most important thing. And then I'm going to keep this up right now while we address questions, just so everybody can get my contact information. And I got a couple of questions here that came in, so I want to address them. It's what is the incentive package that's being pitched now and how does it compete with Georgia? And it said Georgia just revised theirs, and which I think was good to model. Well, what they revised was stuff that we already had in play. There was a big deal about Georgia actually including an audit. Like, I can't believe there's checks and balances. Wow, what a great thing. We've been doing that. We've been doing that for many, 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 many years. All the programs that have been proposed or passed in Florida have always been with checks and balances. And that's one of the fallacies is that, there needs to be more checks and balances. Well, we've always had checks and balances. We've always had performance-based awards. So they all come after the fact that we've always had audits involved. And so we've strengthened some of those things maybe, but that's not been an issue. In terms of, are we competing with Georgia? Look, Georgia's very, very aggressive. Georgia also has a state income tax, which makes it easier to recoup some of those costs. Georgia also has a legislature that is already extremely supportive, which we're working towards. So, are we at the same dollar amounts and are we at the same percentages of Georgia? No. But what we always continue to say is getting something passed is the first step, and we need to get something passed. And so we need to know what our limitations are as a state, as a legislature, and focus on what we can get past. We know we have a lot of additional things that make coming to Florida worth it. And so, you know, regardless of whether ours is as aggressive or as big as some of the other ones, we're still going to have great locations. We're still going to have great weather. We're still going to have history. And we're still going to have great crews. And yes, we're going to lose some because some people are only interested in the biggest, best rebates possible. But we're going to get our fair share. And that's what we just want to compete. And that's really what we're trying to do, is get back in the game of competing. So that's where we're at there. Will the film tax pitch include asking for long-term commitment? Well, yes, of course. But again, we have to know our limitations. If there is an opening to get a long-term commitment, absolutely, we would ask for that. But if somebody says, well, you can have a one-year program or you can have nothing, well, we're not going to turn it down and say, well, if we don't get 4 or 5 or 6 years, we're not taking it. No, I mean, we're going to do the best we can given some of our challenges. And so we're always going to take, you know, what we can get and continue to work towards a longer program. Since Florida is a hospitality state, is it possible to get the large hotel corporations, independent hotels, and universities on board with the film tax credit? We are, as much as we possibly can. We have a good relationship with Visit Florida. We have a good relationship with the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association. But over the last couple of years, they've had their challenges as well with the state legislature trying to kill Visit Florida and eliminate that marketing funding. And now they're dealing with the pandemic. And so everybody is on the same page that we want what's best for Florida. But in terms of will large hotel corporations or you know, things like that all of a sudden jump in and have a major impact, I wouldn't count on that. I mean, we get their support, we have their support. But they're you know, making sure that they're taking care of themselves as well. In terms of, if the vote in favor of implementing an incentive, will that happen in January of 2021? No, that was the vote. If there is a vote, it would go in during the legislative session, which is you know, March and April. And in terms of process, you know, the process is a bill gets filed in both the House and the Senate. That's the goal. Then they get assigned to usually 3 committees in each side. So 3 in the Senate, 3 in the House. And then if they go to the first committee, if they get voted upon and passed, then they go to the next committee and then the next committee. And if they get past all 3, they get to the respective floor votes. So the Senate and the House. And if they happen to pass both of those, then they go to the governor for signing. And so there's a lot of steps in the process. Everyone is very important. You can't get to the floor votes until you get past the first committee. In the last couple of years, we've had good success getting some progress in the Senate. We've hit a stone wall in the House, and we're hopeful that with new leadership coming in, that will have more open-mindedness in that, and hopefully we can make some progress. And so that's where we're at with the House. So now I'm gonna go to some of these questions that have been submitted. I understand that the ROI on bills brought before the House is a factor in deciding the bill is worth moving forward. Where can I find out how that calculation is made? Bill, if we knew exactly what that formula was, I promise that we would be shouting it from the rooftops. It's a weird formula that the state uses. It comes down to state taxes out versus state taxes in, but there are a lot of variables that they use. And we try to work with the state economists to make sure that whatever we're proposing is going to pass mustard. But it isn't as easy as just a simple formula that we plug in Excel spreadsheets and you know, dial in that numbers. But in essence, the most important thing is if the state is going to put in $1 from the state budget, it needs to receive $1 back in state tax revenues. Forgetting about anything local or county taxes, they don't calculate that. They don't calculate film-induced tourism. They don't calculate a lot of different things. And is that right? We definitely don't agree with all of that, but it's not our game. We have to play by the rules that are given to us. And ultimately we have to make sure that if the state is going to put in $1, then it's going to get $1 in state tax revenues back. Ray asks, can we get info from counties that have provided film incentives to show our reps how successful they are? Yes and no. I mean, like, those are ongoing. And, we try and get as much statistics from those as we possibly can. And we can work to get some more. Right now, there are 6 current counties that have programs in addition to Miami-Dade has a county program, but they also have a couple of local city municipality incentives as well. And those are ongoing and they're fluid. And right now there's a little bit of unknown around some of them because of the pandemic, with funding being a little tough. Pam says, the link you're speaking of, who works with the lobbyist? Pam, I don't understand that question. So if you want to type back in and elaborate, I'll see if I can get it. Joe asked, he just logged in and missed the first part. Will there be a recording? That's the goal. We're going to try and get this up so we can pass it around so everybody has the information. We're going to do the best we can on that. My partners and I are forming a production company in Tampa Bay area. Who would you suggest we reach out about our project? The Film Tampa Bay, the local film commission in Tampa Bay. Tyler and Jesse are awesome. Reach out to them. Richard talks about ROI in Michigan. Yep, ROI was a challenge in Michigan. And the challenge in Michigan was because they had to build everything from the ground up. Whereas in Florida, we have a lot of things already in place. We have the education system. We have infrastructure. Yes, it has been eroding over the last decade or so, but I mean, it's still there compared to, say, a Michigan that has to build from scratch. We have 100 years worth of industry professionals. Michigan was talking about retraining. So we have a lot of those things already. In terms of your question, how may we assist in convincing our legislator that our industry brings money in? Well, this is it, Richard. I mean, I would encourage you to reach out to me. You seem to have a lot of background in this. I'd love to have a conversation with you. So shoot me an email and we'll see if we can set up some time to talk and we can find some common things there that you can reach out to legislators. Stacy asked, what happened to the Florida legislation from years ago that mandated commercials for Florida-based corporations like orange juice, lottery, sugar commercials had to be produced in Florida? That is no longer implemented. So we have had this discussion. We've tried to find the legislation that noted that, and we have struggled to actually track down the very specific language so we can see if we can re-implement that. That's part of the relationships that we've built. We've as an organization, we've built a relationship with a lot of different organizations and try to encourage them too. And when you talk to them, most of them say, oh yeah, we want to use, local and all that. And then execution may or may not always play through. And so there is only so much legislative bandwidth that we have in a legislative session. And so this is certainly talked about a lot in trying to bring that back. And we continue to try to find the actual legislation so we can try and re-implement that, because that's a good point. And then Paul, I didn't get to your question about the best way to reach out to your local legislator, but I actually recently talked to Representative Miller about this, and what he said was there is no one perfect way because so many legislators are different. And so what I typically do, and I've had decent luck, I reach out with an email, copying the aides all the time, asking for a meeting or a phone call, whatever it may be. And then I usually wait about a week and then I send a follow-up because if you send something and it gets lost in the email and you never follow up, well, then they don't need to deal with it. So I follow up about a week later by email. And then if I don't hear anything again, another week goes by, I may pick up the phone or I may send another email. Once a week is not a bad thing to especially over the summer and into the fall. Once a week is not bad to reach out to. You start sending 2 and 3 emails or phone calls a week, then you become, kind of an annoying stalker, and nobody wants that affiliated with us. So, but about once a week, and then, you kind of got to decide, if you sent 3 emails and made 2 phone calls and you haven't been able to get on the calendar, they probably don't want to meet with us. And that's just the facts, and so, do your best, but the follow-ups are important. There's been times when I've sent 2 and 3 emails or left a message and I don't hear anything. And then I think, well, I'm about to give up. And I send one more email a month or 2 later and boom, I get it. And so whether it be phone calls, emails, sometimes it's just not a good time and you don't always know that. And so the repetition of staying respectfully persistent is always important. I'm trying to see if there are any more questions here to get to, because we're a little bit over an hour, which is what we were trying to do. Okay, the PAC information, that is floridiansforfilm.com. That's what we put up earlier. And so let me go back to that. Floridiansforfilm.com. This is the political action committee that makes contributions to campaign funds. And so very strategically, again, as I mentioned, this is not affiliated with Film Florida, other than we know the people who run it. And so we all have the same goal. And so we certainly communicate, but this is no affiliation with Film Florida. Any funding does not come from Film Florida. Individual members can certainly contribute if they want, but I would encourage you to look at this if you're interested in making campaign contributions. These are made very strategic in terms of leadership and supporters and making sure, I always refer to this as a huge puzzle. This is a puzzle. And the more pieces we can put into a puzzle, the better our chances of finishing that puzzle. And so the Floridians for Film and Tech Production PAC is a piece of that puzzle. Our meetings that I have is another piece of the puzzle. Meetings that all of you may have is another piece of the puzzle. The more pieces of the puzzle we can put together, the better our chances of getting a bill passed. So, okay, so let's see. We only have like 1 or 2 more questions and then we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate everybody sticking around. Due to the pandemic and the damage to Florida businesses and the economy, the film industry could be pitched as a way to jumpstart the economy. Some of the hardest hit businesses would benefit. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, Rebecca. 100%. When I meet with legislators, I introduce them to the organization or reintroduce them. I talk about what we do as an organization, which is primarily marketing, professional development, networking, advocating. Then I talk about the initiatives we have taken on as an organization over the last 6 months, a number of things having to do with the pandemic. And then I say, and now fast forward, our organization and our industry wants to be part of the economic recovery of Florida. We believe we can be a very important part. And here's why. When an average feature film or television series comes to a location, they spend upwards of $20 million in a 3 to 4 month period. That is something that is extremely important right now to Florida's economy. Who wouldn't want another $20 or $30 million in their local economy right now? In order to do that, we need support and we need to be able to compete. But our number one priority is helping Florida's economy. And we can do that by bringing more projects, more jobs, more resources here to the state of Florida. So Rebecca, that's an excellent point. That is a number one of what we're leading with is how can our industry be part of Florida's economic recovery? So thank you for reminding me for that. Then looking at my questions just to make sure that I have covered everything. So our goal is to continue to work with leadership in the Florida legislature. That's why we engage a lobbyist, and that's why we spend so much time on this. Where we need the help from all of you is the groundswell of grassroots support from the individual legislators. And that's what we're really asking for here, is to hope everybody will take me up on the offer of reaching out to me and asking about people that, candidates and legislators, so they know, reaching out themselves and making sure that we get the communication. Out of sight, out of mind, absolutely 100% it happens in the state legislature. If we're silent and we don't get in touch with legislators, that's one less thing that they need to worry about. So the more we can engage with them and the more we can respectfully and professionally communicate with them, the better our chances going forward. Please don't depend on other people. Please don't assume that somebody else is going to do it. We are the somebody else. All of us on this call today are the somebody else that needs to reach out to these legislators and candidates and make sure they understand why they should care about our industry, why our industry is important to the state of Florida, and why our industry can be part of Florida's economic recovery. So with that, I want to wrap up and sincerely thank all of our Film Florida members for their support. We're a volunteer-driven organization that's funded entirely by our members. So without the ongoing support from our members, we don't exist, which means we can't do things like this. We can't engage legislators. We can't do our core things that we want to do. If you're not a member of Film Florida, we really hope you'll consider joining at filmflorida.org. Annual student memberships are just $25. Individual memberships are $75, and annual corporate memberships start at $500. Keep up with everything that we're doing on our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And finally, please check out the Film Florida podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Store, Stitcher, and the iHeartRadio app. Season 3 of the Film Florida podcast starts in October, and we have some really great guests. So thanks for watching, and stay safe and healthy.